Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along. Alan, would you like to say a few words to welcome everybody?
Sure. So welcome everybody. Good morning. Happy New Year. Lisa's slowly letting you all in to join this webinar this morning featuring our fantastic Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, who's got the biggest smile in Hounslow. To say a few welcoming words, I'd like to wish you all, first of all, a very big Happy New Year. Here we are again at our annual finance gathering, this time online. Before we go too much further, I'd like to say I'm doing the introductions this time rather than our much-loved Sally, who's convalescing at home. This year, we're going to hear from Councillor Rajawat, the lead member for finance, who's going to outline the local authorities' budget proposals for the upcoming year. Last year, I remember doing the event in Chiswick, and due to some issues beyond Shantanu's control, he wasn't able to turn up to make the presentation himself directly at the beginning, but he turned up to watch the second half of it. And I remember looking at his face with this huge smile, watching his very professional team run through the whole presentation, and could only clap at the end of it to say, well done. Here we are again a year later. And what a year we've had to go through. We're shut, we're open, we can travel, we can't travel. Perhaps we can travel. However, we can get Shantanu Rajawat here on time today to actually do it through the wonders of Zoom. So, Councillor Rajawat, the floor's all yours. We look forward to hearing the budget spend for the future year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Alan, for the introduction. I kind of put last year's presentation out of my mind, so thanks for the timely reminder. Yes, I am here on time. I won't say it wasn't a struggle, but I'm here, and it's great to be here. And I have to say thank you from the outset to the Chamber. I'll talk a little bit more about our relationship with the Chamber later on, but you know, the fact that we've organised this with a Christmas break that's fallen in a slightly weird way this year, at very short notice, and there are so many of you here today. I'm incredibly grateful. So, as Alan said, my name is Councillor Shantanu Rajawat. I'm the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services at Hounslow, as well as Finance and Corporate Services, so as well as the money and what you'd know as sort of what the take on business rates and council tax. My remit also includes supporting business as well, especially during the pandemic, but also before the pandemic and afterwards. So, you know, really great to be here. If I may just very quickly introduce the team that is supporting me in the background. We've got Rupert Ben Ragwani, who's the Director of Corporate Finance, the Assistant Director of Corporate Finance, sorry. We've got Kate Bull, who's the Head of Economic Recovery and Regeneration. For my finance team, we've got Anna Hesed, who's a finance manager, and Ben Lee, who's the head of corporate finance. And we've also got Harminder Prasad, who's a senior corporate services contract manager, who looks after our partnership with Liberata, who deliver a lot of the benefits service and help with distribution of grants and the like. So you would have, if you applied for a grant in earlier lockdowns, you would have come across Harminder at some point, I'm sure. So as Alan mentioned, we work with the Chamber and give this presentation. We have done for at least the last 3 years, and that's not going to change this time. I will go through some initial slides about what's been going on in terms of finance at the council, some context, and some of the risks that we are facing and how we're trying to deal with them. But the challenge from you as business leaders has always been, well, what about us? And that's a fair challenge, and it's something that we took away from last year. And there are some slides that I want to concentrate on a little bit more about the business support that we're offering, especially with the uncertainty. As a council, we fully appreciate that many businesses in the borough are feeling slightly uneasy. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and we want to try and do our bit. So hopefully this gives you a flavour, and we can flesh out any of the details in the Q&A. So next slide, please. God, that was very Chris Whitty-like, wasn't it? So just to give you a brief recap on the budget setting timetable, those of you that have been here in previous years know that I always say that, you know, we set our budget in February or February/March, and the day after the budget's set, we start working on the next budget. This timeline sort of gives you an idea of the amount of work that goes in. So along the top there, you kind of see some of the interventions. So we produce a midterm financial strategy in and around December. That gives us an update on where we are on our budget projections. It also talks about changes since the budget was set. And we look at if there is a gap in the budget, how we can fill that off the back of the midterm financial strategy. And then the big report comes in February or March, depending on when the Greater London Authority sets its budget, because their decisions have an impact on some of our decision making as well. We also wait for the settlement from government, telling us how much we're going to receive from government. In past years, again, those of you that have been here previously, government have in the past given us settlements that give us certainty over a number of years. Over the more recent past, we've been getting single year settlements, which gives us some certainty for the year, but makes it very difficult to plan for the longer term, and we have to try and smooth out some of that uncertainty in some of the assumptions that we make as well. So that next slide, please. So the midterm financial strategy that went, as I said, to council in December. It works on the basis that we have set a balanced budget. Legally, we cannot set an unbalanced budget. If we do, government steps in and it becomes all a little bit difficult and fraught. So we will always set a balanced budget. We always have done, and there is nothing, just to reassure business, that will impact on our ability to balance the budget. We are not anywhere near other local authorities that have had to declare themselves in effect bankrupt. We're nowhere near. We've managed the money really well, and we'll continue to do so. We have made previous savings in 2019, and that was to the tune of £8.5 million. And obviously, once we see the effect of that in this year, that's about £500,000 effect for this year. We've also identified new savings of around 2.5 million plus one-off items for this year of 2.8 million. We have, for the first time in 4 years, been able to put in some growth. So where we've been trying to deal, even before the pandemic, with the uncertainty, growth was only there where it was required, things like inflation. So we haven't put in growth to any great degree until this year. So there is £2.5 million in there. And I think that's a very positive story when other boroughs across London actually are having to tighten the purse strings because we've taken some difficult decisions early on in our administration. We are able to now put in some growth so that we can protect services and also be innovative as well. That all having been said, there is a gap that remains that we need to address between now and February. This year it's £7 million. Worst case scenario, if we don't deal with that £7 million, then the figure that you see for 23, 24, 24, 25 are incredibly large. They're cumulative. They would cause me a lot of concern. But as I said to you just a moment ago, we are very prudent. We're very confident that we can deal with the immediate £7 million gap that we have, which will help us deal with future years far better. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. So a little bit about context. Next slide, please. So as I said earlier, the financial settlement is a one-year settlement. There was also a spending review. and that set a 3-year funding envelope, the year 2 and year 3 of that spending envelope, if you like, looks at redistribution of local government funding, what we call the Fair Funding Review. Those of you that have been here before would have heard of that. We are quite worried about that in terms of, the devil is always in the detail there, but potentially that is, on the one hand, redistribution of funds to those areas that need it slightly more. However, there is no denying that that will take money out of London, and with the pressures that we face in London, not just in Hounslow but across London, that is something that is a bit of a challenge, and across London, but of course also across the country. The Local Government Association are lobbying government about making sure that this is as fair as possible. Then other impacts on public finances, obviously COVID-19. What we know, government made no further commitments on funding for public services beyond the current year off the back of COVID-19. But we have to note, and it would be wrong of me to say that there has been no other funding coming forward since the arrival of Omicron. We know that the Chancellor has announced further funding, and again, I'll talk about that shortly. We know, and we're very aware that inflation is rising. You would have seen that for the queues for petrol, but also the number of energy companies that have collapsed, and prices going up generally. That is a big issue, not only for you as business leaders, but also for us as a council. Things will cost us slightly more and will have a detrimental impact on the local economy. We're also already seeing that footfall on our high streets is better than we expected, but not to the levels that it was pre-pandemic. And that is a challenge for us going forward. The impacts, we don't know the impacts of the removal of the COVID safety nets. We expect an increased demand on universal credit. We're not clear what the end of furlough will actually look like, how that will impact the job market both throughout London, nationally, and in Hounslow. We have the support in place. What I would say is we've always had the support in place. We have one of the most generous council tax support schemes possibly in the country, I think, but also in terms of welfare support and signposting. We're very conscious that people out there, as either that have been on furlough or unfortunately been made redundant, will need support, and we're ready to stand in and support them where we can. You would have seen spending commitments from the government to fund locally driven transition to net zero. That was absent despite COP26, and we would like to see a little bit more about that. Those of you that have read any of our strategies, we are very committed to the green recovery and the green agenda and achieving net zero as quickly as possible. So some support with that would have been welcome. And we know that demand for our services increases year on year. And so how much that changes, during the pandemic year, things change quite differently. We don't know how that's going to continue into future year. And there are reforms to social care that we'd like to see come through the details so that we can start planning for how we manage the market. So all of that sort of leads to a picture of uncertainty across the medium term that we absolutely need to manage. Next slide, please. So just looking at where we actually spend the money that we receive through various sources. The next slide will talk to where we actually get the money from. But you'll see there, perhaps a surprise to some, not to others, our biggest spending area is children and adult services. So children social care and adult social care. Those are where we see demand increasing, but also cost increasing. It is very much a buyer's market out there, and a lot of suppliers can pretty much demand their price, and in order to support the most vulnerable in our communities, we pretty much have to spend that money, and we're happy to do so. But that produces a big pressure. And you can see the other areas that we spend our money on as well there. And then when you compare that against the next slide, if I could, yeah, this is where we get our money from. So you'll see, obviously, government grants. Now, government grants can be for specific areas or for general areas. The sort of general expenditure part of the government grant has been reducing year on year, but there is still money given for specific projects that we have to spend on. But you'll see how large council tax is in terms of our take, as well as business rates. They are two significant sort of income sources for the council. And as a council, Hounslow has always been slightly more dependent on our council tax take than other London boroughs. So any fluctuation in council tax or business rates, so your success in essence is our success. If business collapses in Hounslow, we have a big problem on our hands. So we want to do all we can to try and support you. So that's a little bit of context on the budget. I'm going to move on now to the business specific section. So let's go on to business rates. So you may or may not know, I think there is an assumption out there that when you pay your business rates to Hounslow, you receive a bill, you pay it to Hounslow, we keep all of that money. And in reality, I would love to keep all that money because we can reinvest that back into the economy for Hounslow. In reality, only 30% remains with us. The rest goes to either the Mayor of London or central government. There was a pool of business rates in London that was ended last year because it was just too uncertain about what the future held for us. That business rate pool was something that I actually welcomed because it means that you can pool money across London and target where you want to reinvest it over a number of rounds. And I was really sorry to see that go. Maybe it will come back in another year. We're just not sure. As it stands at the moment, we're not in any pooling arrangement, so we just retain 30% that we reinvest into the local economy. As I said, with our own budget, I'm sure you're feeling this. Your volatility continues in terms of your circumstances. And so what we've seen is over 350 premises in Hounslow have lodged material changes in circumstances appeal due to COVID-19 impacts. You will be aware, if you have tried lodging this appeal, that legislation has been passed by government to remove this as a ground for appeal. But we have received new funding worth about 11.5 million to try and smooth this this impact on local economies and on the local economy, and we'll be handing that out as per the criteria. Other key headlines: the multipliers will be frozen at last year's levels. The retail, hospitality and leisure relief will continue, but at a 50% discount rather than full discount, with a cap of £110,000. And then the next revaluation will take effect from April 2023, and then every 3 years. It used to be 5-year interval, so revaluations will happen every 3 years from 2023 onwards. There's no fundamental reforms planned beyond the above changes. And as I said earlier, we're not participating in any business rate pool for this year. So then let's have a look at actions we've taken to try and retain and protect the economy, try and keep as many businesses going through the pandemic. This sort of slide sort of speaks for itself. The business rates relief, you can see the number there. And the amount that we paid in grants to a number of businesses. The shop local voucher, something that we were very proud of. £1 million was spent there, which was a really great result, and that was came out of money received from the government for the alternative restrictions grant. So it's a different way of spending that money to try and not only help business, but also simulate the local economy and try and get new relationships with people that wouldn't necessarily shop in local businesses as well. But apart from that, we're also looking at what our town centre looks like going forward in a post-pandemic world and master planning that. Trying to keep it local, using our procurement power to procure locally rather than the big multiples, to try and sort of keep money in the Hounslow economy. Trying to attract people to come to Hounslow, looking at the visitor economy, and we've launched a website to do that. We know that we've got a number of assets within the borough, and actually people that come into the borough to look at those assets will also spend locally, which I think is very, very important. And then affordable workspace. We've opened a digital dock in Brentford, which we're quite proud of, but also looking at how we reskill people and help them get meaningful jobs, so that they don't feel the impact of COVID-19 too much as well. So I'm almost near the end. I'm getting towards the end. So next slide, please. So as I said in the last slide, £70 million has been paid to businesses since March 2020, and those in hospitality and leisure will know that further support is forthcoming. Just to reassure business, we're looking very closely at what the guidance says. We hope to have a process up and running very soon, but please do register on the council's website. Once the application process is up and running, if you are registered, you'll receive an email letting you know that you can apply, and we hope to turn around the applications as quickly as we possibly can and get the money to you as quickly as we possibly can as well. So moving on to the next slide. So innovate and grow. I'm hoping some businesses were able to attend the launch last week. So I mentioned earlier that we received money for the alternative restrictions grant. Part of that went to pay for the shop local scheme, the £20 voucher. We had some of that allocation left over, and we put our heads together and sort of thought about how we can support businesses in a different way. Obviously, I appreciate grants are important, money coming in is very, very important, but we also acknowledge that a lot of businesses find it very difficult when they're in survival mode, trying to survive a pandemic, to think about how they can continue to grow and continue to prosper, how they can put plans into place, and who they can go to for support and guidance. So the Innovate and Grow program came out of that desire to try and help businesses across the borough be as successful as they possibly can be, and survive for as long as possible. So the round 3 that is live now, as I said, it's all about surviving and thriving, and to help us drive a resilient and diverse economy and support the entrepreneurial spirit. We're very, very proud of the number of SMEs we have in the borough. You do a fantastic job for the local economy, and we want to fight for each and every one of you to be as fruitful and as profitable and thrive as much as possible. So there is a whole program of support out there, which is split into 4 areas. So it's pre-start and startup, support for small, medium and micro businesses, support for high street businesses, and support with how you can grow and secure new business, so your pipeline grows as well. And these are training support schemes, one-to-one mentoring, and collaborative meetings that hopefully you can tap into and get a lot of support from. So I would encourage all businesses on this call to look into this and to sign up. It is there, it's free, and we hope that you can use it. If there are more areas that you feel should be added or things that we should be doing differently, please do contact me and we can look into that as well. But hopefully these support as many businesses as possible. Then we look at reimagining our town centres. So next slide, please. So as I said earlier, we're looking at what our high street looks like. I also mentioned that we know that footfall is lower than pre-pandemic levels. It's not a complete disaster, but there's no doubt that COVID-19 and especially the more recent Omicron variant has dented confidence, and people are naturally more inclined to stay at home. So this leads us to sort of acknowledge that we've got 4 big town centres that we want to thrive. They're destination places, but they do need to evolve, they do need to change with the changing circumstances, and as a local authority, how we can support that and sort of what our vision is for our town centres. And you can see from the slides, we're using words like unique, ambition and ambitious, individual identities. I think that's very, very important. Chiswick has its own identity, Brentford has its own identity, as does Feltham, as does Hounslow, and we need to tap into that so that we support that identity rather than trying to quash it. Co-designing plans, and I know that there are many task force and groups out there who are willing to feed in, and we welcome that support and input, and also attracting investment into our town centres and seeing how we can support either with funding or other support, or find funding from elsewhere to support that inward investment into our town centres. So there's a report going to Cabinet actually tomorrow on this very, very topic. So that's something to keep a lookout on. And then I think I'm at my final slide. So yes, so prosperity in place. So apart from our town centres, I think Hounslow, I've kind of alluded to it earlier, I think it's got a very good story about the place. It should be a place where people want to bring up families to work, and it should be a place for economic activity and a very strong and vibrant economy. So we're looking very closely, and Kate Ball and her team are looking very closely at economic regeneration in the borough. So it's not just about the town centres, although that is very, very important. It's about looking at the economy in the round, and looking about how we reskill and re-employ Hounslow's residents, so that they can be as independent as possible while still having the safety net there if it's needed, and regenerating Hounslow. So you could take the view that COVID-19 has sort of changed everything and you could stand still, but we don't win Council of the Year by standing still. We have to continuously re-innovate, we have to rethink things, reimagine what the place looks like, and work with all stakeholders and residents and businesses to try and achieve that. And this is our first stab at that, and this document will evolve as well. So Alan, that was a lot in there. I appreciate there was a lot to take in there. Apologies, it was a bit longer than I thought, but there was a lot to cover. Hopefully you've got a good flavour of the support we're offering to business, but I'm really, really happy to take questions.
So as the host, I get the chance to ask some questions first. I guess to start off with, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to say a few things. I'm going to say a few things specifically about you, Shantanu. 2 years ago, when we had a selection of key professional people in the borough, from a lawyer, an accountant, HR specialist, we called it a task force, and you came along to help out from the finance side of the council. And there were a lot of businesses who were saying, we're putting in applications for help from the council and we're not hearing very much back. And it's very difficult when you're a very small company to get answers directly from the council. You kindly came along and answered all of those people's questions and got the solutions that they wanted, showing and proving that this really is a caring, sharing council, and well deserved being the council of not just West London, not just London, but the whole of the UK. So congratulations hugely on that. And it's made up of a lot of individual efforts, and those really were recognised and thought through. I get, so that's my blurb out of the way. Thank you. The other thing is, we've got a really good working relationship with the council at your level, at Kate Bull's level, at lots of different levels, and we're very, very proud of that. And we see and talk a lot to neighbouring chambers of commerce in neighbouring boroughs. And frankly, they don't have that type of relationship. And we're very proud of the fact that we do. And it shows the innovative way that the small businesses get a chance to have their voice heard by yourselves. So the question, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that Hounslow Council gets 30% of rates. So that leaves 70%. That's split between the government and the GLA. Is there a way how we can get our Hounslow pound that is taken by GLA spent by them back in Hounslow? Is there a way how Hounslow-based companies, and perhaps via the Chamber of Commerce, can apply to GLA to try and get some of that money spent where it came from?
That's a really good question, actually, Alan. Way to go, throwing the curveball straight away. Well, the honest, go on, sorry.
I was going to say, if there's not a simple answer to it to start off with, perhaps it's a bigger question, because there's perhaps a bigger answer to it, and bigger answers take a bit of working through. And we would very much look forward to trying to work with you as your local Chamber of Commerce in trying to leverage some of that money that's taken out of Hounslow to get it spent back into our borough again.
Yeah. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That, you know, and I will need to work through it. But you know, if I think about it, you know, that business rate goes into a pool, and you know, the GLA offer a number of different grants and sort of projects. So you know, one example that immediately comes to mind is the Creative Enterprise Zone, which I think was money that was sort of redistributed from the GLA's business rate, sorry, take, and that gave us, I think it was something like £1 million to help SME creatives in the west of the borough, you know, from Chiswick all the way through to Gillette Corner, realise their potential. So there is money available there, but you're absolutely right. You know, in an ideal world, as the lead member for finance, or you know, any lead member for finance, would like to keep 100% of their business rates to invest within Hounslow. I appreciate the government will probably want to take of that, but I'd want to keep as much of that. And I thought for a little while that we were moving to that. The issue there was actually where, you know, what you ideally want is government grant to reduce as the business rate take increases, and that kind of balance each other out. In reality, the government grant falls far quicker than the business rate take is retained within Hounslow. So yes, in short answer, yeah, there are projects that come to mind, but I think there is some joint work that we should do there around trying to be very specific with the GLA around the support that we would like to offer our businesses, and how we would like their take of the business rates to be spent and reinvested in Hounslow.
Okay, thank you. So our much loved Sally Smith, quietly from the background, has posed our first question. And she asks, can you explain why Hounslow Council depends more on business rates than other London boroughs?
Oh, no, that's a very, very good question. And we're not entirely sure why it is. It's a historic fact, and it's the way the formula works. We've always had, in terms of the amount of grant we receive, the formula for some reason means that we receive a lower level of grant to even our West London neighbours. I think Ealing and Hillingdon, Harrow and Richmond receive more in the way of government grant, and therefore are less dependent on both council tax and business rates. That's a historic fact, and to be very honest, I can't see that changing. The threat there for us, though, is with fair funding, with the review of how local authorities are funded across the country and redistribution of that wealth. Whilst I wouldn't begrudge, areas that are really struggling outside of London, in the north or in other places, receiving more money, if that is at the expense of Hounslow, for example's sake, then that is council taxpayers' money going elsewhere, and where we're so dependent on that, or business rates going elsewhere that we would be dependent on, and that's the bigger challenge. So, I don't see the formula changing and stopping that trend where we receive less government grant, and indeed government, very much would prefer to spend less on local government. I believe certainly that's my impression. Future reforms to funding pose a bigger challenge for us.
Okay, thank you. I can see that we've got Chris Durkin on here. He's normally got a good question to throw in, but he's quiet at the moment. And I can also see that we've got Mukesh Malhotra. Mukesh, should we have some initials after your name nowadays? Congratulations on that, by the way.
Yeah.
So while there's some other questions coming in, you mentioned a bit about master planning for town centres. We've been working on the Hounslow town centre especially for quite a few years now, under the Safer Business Hounslow banner that we took over from the council that you asked us to run for you. And we've gradually been building that up and put in a few presentations about having a business improvement district, a BID. We ran a survey ourselves at the end of last year to ask companies in Hounslow High Street and in the Treaty Centre and up to the Blenheim Centre if they would be interested in knowing what a BID is and what the thoughts were. We were quite surprised. We polled 10% of the high street on the basis of 2/3 were private shop owners, independent retailers, and 1/3 was national chains. And 100% of the people we asked said that they would like and would be in favour of having a business improvement district. And 66% said that they were either happy to pay a bit more money for it or would need to ask their head office for permission. And largely speaking, the head offices are involved in other bids around the UK. So perhaps as part of the master planning, that could be given some thought to, and we would welcome working with the councillor for that. Now, while I've been rambling on, we've got another question that's come in, which is good. The question is, last year the council launched the Airport Communities campaign to focus attention on the impacts of local economies in the downturn in aviation travel and all of the related trade and supply chain impacts. Can you indicate whether the government has taken note of this in Hounslow and West London, given the importance of Heathrow, and also whether there have been any developments on the green economy locally? That's from Howard Simmons. Thank you, Howard.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. It's a good question. I'm just trying to scan my memory. We did quite a bit of work both with Heathrow and with the members of Parliament locally around the aviation communities. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think any of that was taken forward. If you don't mind, Alan, I'm going to ask Kate, just in case I've missed something. She's got a far better eye on detail. Kate, has any of that been missed? And
No,
do you want to talk about
I think it's your response to a fair one. We did a huge amount of lobbying. We had our Blue Skies, the Blue Skies conference with Wetlands of Business. We had our own summit, which brought together airports from around the country, and we did lots of lobbying offline responses. And I think basically we were unbelievably disappointed that the government didn't take more seriously the impact on airport communities, and not just with Heathrow particularly for our point, but across the entire country. So it didn't unfortunately unlock any unique funding for airports, which was hugely disappointing given the impact it did have on our communities' lives, thousands of people's lives in the borough. So yeah, that was very disappointing. I think, do you want me to, I've got a few bits probably on the green economy locally, if you want me to.
Please, that'd be really helpful.
That bit. I'm sorry, I haven't got anything more positive to say about the government funding with the lobbying. So on the green economy, we do have in place now a new team, kind of green recovery team, and one of them is kind of specifically looking at the green economy. So we are launching a pilot of Green Skills Academy, and delivery will start from that, I understand, in February. So that's looking at future green skills and ensuring our residents have the right skill packages to be able to access these jobs that are coming down the line, which is fantastic. We're also working with West London Business on their innovation zone linked to Heathrow and how that might look, and they're very much focused on a kind of jet zero, but obviously we're looking at but a zero carbon model there long term for Heathrow, and how Hounslow can really be part of that, and ensuring that we're kind of looking at a hub and spoke approach in old money. So ensuring we have a basis in Hounslow to ensure that our businesses are able to access affordable space linked to that green innovation. So that kind of green innovation hub scoping is underway. So I think at the moment the team, it's a brand new team, so they're very much doing lots of scoping, understanding what we have in Hounslow around the green economy, circular economy, what skills are needed, what's happening around the sub-region and across London, and where the opportunities are. So there'll be a kind of firmer programme, as I understand it, coming out over the next kind of 3 months or so.
And I can also say at Hounslow Chamber of Commerce, we've got some green, we've got a green lead on any environmental programmes, as one of the directors, Chris Greenwood, appropriately named. We're trying our best to lure people in with innovative, clever, environmentally focused products that we then push to the fore and try to get those into some of the bigger companies in our borough to get them to use them. That's one of the key things that we've been doing for the last couple of years. And that's really come to a fore after COP26. We have an annual event with the council that's a green economy focused seminar, where we get the different companies to come along and speak about those in our local economy of Hounslow. To answer, Howard, a little bit more of your question, we are having huge unemployment issues, especially in the Feltham part of our borough. The industrial parks there that survive on Heathrow Airport, as are our neighbours in Ealing in their areas of Southall. And at the Heathrow Economic Forum, which Kate and I both attend, that's now been raised and is going to be talked about as a main key issue by Lord Blunkett at the next one, which I believe is later, which coming along soon. Mukesh Malhotra has asked a question, which is when will the car parking team upgrade the meters to use the last 4 digits of number plates, please? As another borough that doesn't do very much about Heathrow does, apparently, called Hillingdon.
I will have to take that away. I'll I don't know the answer, and it'd be wrong of me to give a wrong answer on that one. I don't think any of my team know either, so I'll come back to Mukesh on that one.
Mukesh, you're firing in too many questions, my friend. With the redevelopment of Hounslow West, what refurbishment of Hounslow West is being planned by London Borough of Hounslow and Transport for London? Do you have any ideas?
So again, as I understand it, TfL are very much in pre-app on the Hounslow West site. So I don't know much about what the latest on that is. But I know that any development will include some sort of SIL contribution for local infrastructure and the local area. But as I understand it, there isn't an application in, so I wouldn't be able to flesh that out until we get a full application in, and then we can look at the local area in the round, as we would do with any area.
Okay. And another one from Mukesh. When will London Borough of Hounslow upgrade the waste bins to ones being used around London of using solar panels and segregation of rubbish? I've not come across that one before.
No, I've not come across that one. It's a good question. I will ask the question of highways. It's Hounslow Highways that will install and manage and maintain the dustbin. So if there is technology out there, I don't know why you would have a solar panel on a bin, but
no, neither do I.
Yeah, maybe it's a charging station. Who knows? I don't know the answer to that one. Sorry, I'll get back to Mukesh on that one.
Okay. So I remember a few years ago we did a seminar. I'm trying to get used to the word seminar instead of webinar. We did a seminar where actually live people were there, and we were talking about the green economy in Hounslow and how you would get charging stations more available for electric vehicles. And we're gradually seeing these popping up around the borough. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? There was also some talk about using street lamps as a charging point as well, and having and not charging people the same rate for parking your car in a council bay if it was electric compared to being petrol or diesel.
Yes. So my colleague Hanif Khan is very much leading on this. He's the lead member for transport. But yes, there are plans to upgrade streetlights to be able to accommodate charging points. I think they're relatively slow by their very nature. But a top up whilst you're parked is very welcome. So as I understand it, the last conversation I had with Councillor Khan, they're currently in the process of looking at where there is a need and where it will be most beneficial to sort of retrofit these charging points on lampposts. I still think there's a lot of work to be done on EV infrastructure. As someone who's now considering purchasing an electric car, my biggest sort of holdback at the moment is not only range anxiety, but also, if I don't have a home charger or I'm out and about, where am I going to charge it? And Hounslow isn't terrible in comparison to the rest of London, but there is still plenty more to be done there. So, certainly our planning department wants to try and support EV infrastructure on that. In terms of your question on charging, to be very honest, I don't think we got any further on that. I've not heard anything, and nothing's ringing in my mind about charging less for parking where you've got an EV and you're charging using a public bay. But again, that's something that I think is a very good idea, and it may well come along later.
Well, we don't have any more questions, but I've got something, I've got a little story I want to share with you. One of my friends is disabled and he's from Spain. He came along and he parked his car. He came along for his disability test at Hounslow House a few years ago. And he came along and he parked his car close and he went to pay some money on the meter and the meter wasn't working. And he looked over and there was a traffic warden close to his car. So we went over and he said, look, this isn't working. I'm going to get a disabled badge. And the parking warden said, actually, I know that that's not working. And don't worry, go in and have your test. It's fine. I'll stay by your car and make sure nobody else puts a ticket on it. So we went off. He had his interview, he had his test, and he got confirmed that he was disabled and his blue badge was fine and it was renewed. And he came downstairs and the parking warden was still there. And he said to him, look, I'm very sorry I was cross with you, first of all, for saying you better not be putting a ticket on my car I tried to pay. And he actually said, well, it's no problem. I'm pleased I could help you. And I don't think there's enough good news stories that come out about some of the staff and workers who are out there in the council that actually try and help people in these very difficult times that we're going through. And people do this in our borough, and it's really nice to see. We've got some more questions. Shankar from Oasis says, we've got many electric cars in our street, but only 2 street chargers. How can we request more street chargers from the council? Is there anyone I can contact? So that would be Hanif Khan, would it?
It would be Hanif Khan, yeah, absolutely. Contact him in the first instance. And, as I say, the project for lampposts, we're very, very keen on because it works really well. Especially if you happen to live in a terrace house without a driveway, it's a nice thing to have. So yeah, please do contact Hanif Khan. He is looking at where we need this infrastructure. So if there is information that is local that will be helpful, he will receive it very happily.
Right, okay, and he's asked for a contact number, and I can give you that, Shankar, no problem at all. His email address is on the council website, as it is for all of the councillors. You're very approachable people, I must say. Some people aren't. So it's coming up to the top of the hour, as Sally Smith used to say. I can hear her words echoing in my ears at the moment. I want to personally thank yourself for coming along every year to make this presentation. Not just to thank yourself, but to thank all of your team for coming along. Harminder, Ben, Anna, and yourself, Kate. Thank you very much for coming along and doing this presentation today. It helps hugely the local companies in the borough, especially the smaller companies, to hear and understand what the future plans are for them, for us, and for them to understand that their survival and their growth is key to the council's growth and balancing their budgets as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Would you like to say any closing words, Shantanu?
Just a very quick one. At the Chamber of Commerce Award, the leader of the council, Steve Curran, sort of said, we are a business-friendly council, and we genuinely do mean that. Your sentiments are absolutely correct, Alan, and we value our relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, but we also value our relationship with business more widely. I don't want to understate this, but the success of business in the borough is key to the success of the council, and businesses in the borough are a key jigsaw in the bigger picture. So we value the relationship that we have with business, but also with the Chamber of Commerce in sort of providing that interface with business, and we're really excited with that relationship developing and building over the years. So thank you, Alan, and thank you, Sally, for all the support that you've offered us over the years.
You're very kind to say so, Shantanu. Thank you. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realise in our borough is that the GDP of Hounslow is double that of Ealing, double that of Richmond, it's double that of Hammersmith and Fulham. We are the borough of business in West London. And it's through good relationships that we've got that help that survive and thrive. Thank you all very, very much for today. Happy Monday, Happy New Year, and hope you have a great week ahead, and good to see and hear from you all. Thank you very much this morning.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.